and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
You kept shooting him while his back was under the truck. You kept shooting him, man. You kept shooting him in his back. His back was turned to you, man.
When I get you, very forgiven. Step off. Step off.
Not guilty. Oh, I'm not guilty.
This is Susan Mellen. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, based on an untruthful testimony. She was 42 years old when she was arrested in Los Angeles, California, at a McDonald's, while taking her daughter to get a Happy Meal. But that was the last time she would see her child for 7 years, as she was charged for the murder of an ex-boyfriend.
You are under arrest now for murder.
Mellen's conviction was based solely on an informant, who claimed that Mellen had confessed the killing to her. She was in prison for a total of 17 years until the informant was proven to be a pathological liar and an unreliable witness. And now, this is the moment that Mellen's case is finally overturned.
The judgment is vacated, the conviction is overturned, and as to Ms. Mellen, the case is dismissed.
From tears in one moment to jumping in joy the next. When released, Mellen took her daughter to McDonald's to deliver that long-awaited Happy Meal. The state of California awarded Mellen $597,000 in compensation. And reportedly, the Los Angeles City Council agreed to pay $12 million to Susan Mellen.
I'm freezing! Ah!
Next, we're in the Miami-Dade County Criminal Court for a hearing related to the murder trial of Lukace Kendle.
Well, the first thing we needed to address is he's been restored to competency.
Correct, Your Honor. There are two evaluations from Dr. Luis Quintana and Dr. Richardson. They both find that he's competent.
Kendle's just been deemed competent to stand trial, where he faces charges of second-degree murder and attempted murder. While working as an armed security guard at a Miami strip club, Kendle approached two men who were sitting inside a truck in the parking lot. Kendle claims one of the men threatened them. He says he also believed one of them had a weapon, so he opened fire, killing one of them with 8 shots, 4 of them in the back. Both men were unarmed. In the gallery today are friends and family of the deceased victim, Kijwan Bird, including his devastated parents. To evaluate his competency, Kendle was moved from a prison to a hospital, and defense attorney Carlos Gonzalez wants to keep him there, fearing what might become of his client's mental state if he returns to jail.
And then the issue is that you want him housed where?
At the same facility he's been housed.
In order to prevent him from decompensating?
Yes, Your Honor. He eventually decompensated to the point where he was sitting in the fetal position, naked, not eating, and not interacting with any human being.
As Gonzalez goes on, the request to prevent Kendle from returning to jail becomes just too much for Bird's father to bear.
Yeah, but my son is dead, man. My son is dead. He needs to go to prison. He don't need to be laying no mental hospital. He need to go to prison, man. Come on, Let's go. He want to play crazy. He wasn't crazy when he killed my son, man. He wasn't crazy then, but he crazy now. All of a sudden he crazy now. You want to lay in a mental hospital? You done murdered my son, man, for nothing. When he was trying to get away from you, you trying to get away from you, man. And you kept shooting him while his back was under the truck. You kept shooting him, man. You kept shooting him in his back. His back was turned to you, man. He was trying to get away from you, and you murdered him, man, like you. You murdered him, man, like that.
The distraught father is escorted out of the courtroom as family members look on.
And you want to play crazy, man? You ain't crazy. You ain't crazy, man.
Meanwhile, the defendant just watches it all unfold. At trial, Kendle decided to represent himself and attempted to use the stand your ground defense.
The trajectory coming from outside of the vehicle would have to come in that downward.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
He was convicted on both charges and is now serving a life sentence in the Florida prison system. This is Leonid Graser, who's on trial in Moscow, Russia, for the murder of his sister, Aradia Quarrel. According to the defendant, he was commanded by Satan to kill his 21-year-old sister, who he stabbed multiple times. Today, Graser in the Shubinsky courthouse, behind the walls of a glass cage. This practice is rarely seen today outside of Russia to prevent dangerous criminals from attacking or possibly even escaping, which is exactly what Graser is planning to do. It appears now that Graser calmed down, but moments later, he somehow has slipped through the slats at the top of the bulletproof security dock. A gap in the video doesn't reveal how he did it, but if we look again, officers consider opening the box to stop him. But Graser's way ahead of them. One officer strikes him, but he's not giving up. The female officer who runs over and presses a large button on the wall, calling for backup. Graser's pants are coming off during the escape. The officer has a firm grip on Graser's leg and is not about to let go. Then another officer arrives. At this point, these Russian officers are not playing around. As the taser comes out, he makes sure Graser knows what's about to happen. Graser finally had enough. After putting his pants back, Graser will go on to make a full confession for the murder and said he had no regrets about what he did. This is Kirsten Labato. She served 16 years in prison for a murder she did not commit. At 18 years old, she was charged with the brutal murder of a homeless man in Las Vegas. She was first convicted of first-degree murder, but on a retrial, she was convicted on the lesser charges of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 13 to 45 years. And after spending 16 years behind bars, a new hearing was presented with evidence that confirmed the actual day of the victim's death was when Labato was 3 hours away with her family, proving that Labato could not have possibly committed these crimes. This is Labato outside for the first time as a free woman.
I feel overwhelmed, I feel excited, I feel grateful. I'm so happy.
Labato has filed a lawsuit against the Las Vegas Police Department, and her compensation claim is ongoing.
Where'd you know? Okay, well, we got more people coming too.
This is Dejan Brown. He is facing murder charges related to the death of his girlfriend, Nitisha Lattimore, and the death of her 3-year-old son, Nilo, in December 2020. Police said Nitisha was stabbed multiple times, and her remains were found in a body bag near the river. The child's body has not been found, but police believe Brown tossed the boy into the river. Dejan Brown was sitting in a courtroom in Ohio for a motion hearing when the grieving father attacked the man accused of killing his son and his son's mother. Nilo's father, Tonio Hughes, ran to the defense table where he began to punch Mr. Brown in the head. Mr. Hughes was later pinned to the ground by deputies.
Base, can we get back up in 560 now? Scott?
He tried to get back up again and attack Dejan, but authorities managed to get him out of the courtroom. If convicted, Dejan Brown could face the death penalty. As for the father, he was found in contempt of court and was sentenced to 7 days behind bars at the local Hamilton County Justice Center.
Each holiday, each moment, each season that goes by is very painful because, like I said, we miss our daughter, we miss our grandson. We feel empty without them.
This is John Bunn. He spent 27 years wrongfully convicted of murder.
I'm an innocent man, Your Honor, and I have always been an innocent man, Your Honor.
While living in Brooklyn, New York, Bunn was only 14 years old when he was arrested by NYPD Detective Louis Scarcella. Bunn later spent 16 years behind bars and then 11 years out on parole, where he still fought to prove his innocence. Then finally, his conviction was overturned based on the wrongdoing of Detective Scarcella and the fact that there wasn't even probable cause to arrest Bunn in the first place.
I want y'all to know that y'all convicted and had a wrong man in prison.
And after 27 years of fighting to clear his name, he is finally exonerated.
I want to say thank you, Your Honor, because it's been 27 years I've been fighting for my life.
But before he leaves the courtroom, he has a moment with the judge. Bunn later filed a lawsuit against the city of New York and Detective Scarcella. This is Jalil Smith-Riley in a Cincinnati, Ohio courtroom, who police say confessed to a robbery, killing a 20-year-old woman and seriously wounding her boyfriend. Portia Brooks was in her car with her boyfriend, Aaron Martin, when Smith-Riley came up to her car with two others looking to rob them. When Smith-Riley found out Martin didn't have any cash, he was shot in the head, leaving him with permanent brain damage. Smith-Riley then shot at Brooks, which killed her 3 days later.
This is somebody that feels genuine remorse. This is somebody that thinks about this every day, and he knows that he can't go back in time and undo what he did. Lord. Go back and I just want to come home with it.
Now, Portia Brooks' mother delivers a victim impact statement.
But he killed me mentally, emotionally. He killed my identity as a mother of 3, as a family of 4.
This is now Brooks' sister speaking.
I have to deal with life without Portia, so he should deal with life without parole.
This is moments right before Jalil Smith-Riley gets the news that he will never be allowed to return home again.
Court defendant serve a term of life without parole. As to count 4.
This is Marquee Lloyd, who is convicted of murdering a police officer in Orlando, Florida.
Have anything you want to say for yourself?
Lloyd was already on the run from the police after he killed his former girlfriend, who was pregnant with his child. A month later, Lloyd is spotted in a Walmart. You can see him walking in. Moments later, Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton pulls in. You can see her grab a cart and walk in. Reportedly, they cross paths every few minutes. Outside the store, Lieutenant Clayton was notified, and she tried to stop and arrest Lloyd. When a shootout begun, Lieutenant Clayton was killed during the interaction. Being shot 4 times following the murder, Lloyd took off again, which led to a 9-day manhunt, where he was later found. During the arrest, he tried to escape, where he lost his left eye in the altercation. Here in court, Lloyd took the stand. Reportedly, he believed everyone was out to kill him.
And I was just reacting, Mayor. I was just reacting. Even when they opened the door, I just reacted. I fired 2 shots, just reacted.
The jury then found him guilty.
It really hurts deep down inside.
This is Lieutenant Clayton's sister giving a victim impact statement.
She stood in the place as my mother when I didn't have one. I truly miss my sister. I truly miss her.
And this is the moment that Lloyd hears that the jury unanimously recommends the death sentence.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Marquee Lloyd, should be sentenced to death.
All right, why don't we remove Mr. Lloyd from the courtroom?
The judge later agreed with the jury and sent Lloyd to death, where he now sits behind bars waiting for his death sentence. This is Sidney Newsome, who is facing a domestic violence charge in Pike County Justice Court in Mississippi. Southern District Judge Aubrey Rimes was presiding over the hearing. Newsome initially seemed to be in a good mood as he reviewed some papers. But an altercation with a court officer seemed to agitate him. Newsome was then asked to sign some papers. Which the officer presented to Judge Rimes. However, Newsome was not ready to rest his case. He furiously argued with Judge Rimes, who promptly asked the officer to remove him from the court. As he was being led from the courtroom, Newsome lost it. First, he grabbed a stack of papers and threw it at Judge Rimes. The officer tried to subdue him, but Newsome managed to overpower her. He then threw a telephone at the judge. This is when the judge decided to take matters into his own hands. As Newsome threw more paper at him, Judge Rimes single-handedly pinned him to the table. Eventually, backup arrived. Newsome was restrained and taken from the courtroom. He faced additional charges for contempt of court and served 48 hours in prison.
Ridiculous, this shouldn't happen. My first concern was, for the people in that courtroom. And, so that's not supposed to happen. Judge Rimes is no pushover. He's probably got a few years on me, but he was still able to physically grab the guy, pick him off the ground, and put him on the table.
Of course, I know Judge Rimes personally, and he's quite capable of handling himself, but you never want to see anything like that, obviously, happen in your courtroom.
We're going to turn next to the night of terror in an American city, Kalamazoo, Michigan. An Uber driver now charged with multiple counts of murder, 6 people dead, apparently killed at random.
This is Jason Dalton. On February 20th, 2016, authorities received several 911 calls about a rogue Uber driver in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
I'd like to report a crazy driver. I just got an Uber to my friend's house. On the way there, he was driving neurotic down West Main. He hit a car. He drove through the woods, and I finally just jumped out.
I just got passed by a silver Traverse going southbound on Douglas, probably every bit of 100 miles an hour.
There was a man going roughly 70, 80 miles an hour, weaving in and out of both lanes of traffic.
This silver SUV just slammed on its brakes outside my house.
Okay.
And threw out a guy.
The driver was later identified as 45-year-old Jason Dalton, who would later go on a deadly killing spree that night. While picking up a passenger, Dalton shot 25-year-old Tiana Carruthers several times in the parking lot of an apartment complex.
Okay, so female's down. She's been shot.
Don't move.
Okay, where's the person that shot her? I don't know. The car sped off.
Dalton then sped off and changed cars from a silver SUV to a black Chevy before pulling over in the parking lot of a Kia dealership and fatally shooting 53-year-old Richard Smith and his 17-year-old son, Tyler.
Hi, we just drove by the Kia, and a guy just shot some people in the parking lot. There were 2 guys laying on the ground and 1 guy pointing a gun at them.
10 minutes later, authorities received another 911 call.
Kimberly County 911.
I'm at the Kalamazoo Cracker Barrel, and there's been gunshots in a car.
There's gunshots in a car?
Yes.
When police arrived, they found 4 people shot dead outside a Cracker Barrel restaurant. A 5th victim, 14-year-old Abigail Kopf, survived with horrific injuries. In total, 6 people died and 2 were gravely wounded in what police called an act of random shooting. In between the shootings, Dalton picked up and dropped several passengers who didn't suspect a thing. One even jokingly asked if he was the shooter.
We were kind of driving through medians, driving through the lawn, speeding along, and then finally, once he came to a stop, I jumped out of the car and ran away.
Dalton was arrested later that night after a cop identified his car. He surrendered without resistance.
Hey, Jason.
Hi.
How you doing, man? You all right today?
Yeah, not really though.
What's going on?
I know you want an explanation.
You can get one. If you're not this guy.
No. If you guys told me, it would blow your mind.
Okay.
During his interrogation, Dalton blamed the Uber app, claiming its logo resembled the devil who took over his body and made him shoot 8 people.
This symbol is on an Uber. Could you bring my phone up to me so I can see it?
I have the Uber thing on here.
Can I see it? On Uber. When I clicked it, and then there was like a double head that popped up. And I pressed that button. And that's where all the problems were happening. I've experienced the full body takeover. It literally has control of me. I would have never done any of these atrocities that have happened.
Right. What made you be a prayer on plane? The app, the Uber? Is that what made you put the vest on too? Yeah. You remember shooting people?
There's like little spots where it just pops in.
At trial, Tiana Carruthers, who suffered severe mental and physical trauma, took the stand. The judge intervened as the witness broke into tears.
Ms. Carruthers, are you okay? Or do we need to take a minute?
When the prosecutor asked Carruthers if she needed a minute, Dalton lunged at the victim. The judge asked for a recess, and Dalton was dragged out of the courtroom. Loved ones of the victims gave some powerful victim impact statements.
Now my gears turn thinking, why would you hurt me? I pause, replay, and relive every single moment. I just can't keep living in the past. But it feels so fresh waking up in cold sweats that you, Jason Dalton, might come again and empty a full clip.
You are nothing but worthless, despicable evil.
When the detective sat my mom and I down and told us that my brother and my dad had been shot and killed, I couldn't feel a thing. I was emotionally numb, and I felt like time had stopped.
Eventually, Dalton pleaded guilty to multiple counts of murder, assault, and felony firearm. Finally, it was time for the Uber killer to learn his fate.
You, Jason Brian Dalton, be remanded to the custody of the Michigan Department of Corrections for assessment and sentencing for a period of life without the possibility of parole as mandated by statute. This is to be served consecutive to any sentence imposed.
Dalton was ultimately sentenced to life in prison with no hope of parole for his deadly shooting spree. This is Joseph Zieler, a double murder suspect in Cape Coral, Florida. Back in May 1990, 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter Lisa Story were found sexually assaulted and murdered at their home. The gruesome scene was discovered by Robin's mom, Jan Cornell, who called 911.
911, please send someone to my house. Someone come to my house. I think my daughter's dead. Oh my God, please hurry. And please just contact me. Oh my God,
The case went cold for over 2 decades until Zieler was arrested in 2016 for shooting and injuring his son. His DNA was collected and entered into the database, which matched the DNA evidence from the 1990 crime scene.
Now, Joseph Zeller was actually arrested for another crime, and that's how detectives were able to get his fingerprints and DNA samples. His sample was put into a database called CODIS, and that database also stores unknown DNA samples, including those from the Cornell Story case. Now, when the system ran, that's when detectives got a hit linking Zeller to this 26-year-old murder case.
Zeller was further arrested and charged with capital murder. In court, prosecutors sought the death penalty.
The kind of factors which makes what the defendant did to Robin Cornell and Lisa Story so grave, so serious, that death is the appropriate recommendation, that death is the appropriate sentence.
Zeller then took the stands. He initially denied knowing both the victims and Jan.
Do you know Jan Cornell?
No, I don't know Jan Cornell.
Do you know Lisa Story?
No.
Do you know Robin Cornell?
No.
But later said his DNA was at the crime scene because he and Jan were involved in intimate acts the night before the murders.
And what I believe happened is I slept with Jan Cornell and Leanne Deller, and they were just too much of a pig not to wash their sheets.
He even called the victim's mother a pig.
Your DNA would have still been there 5 months later.
Yes.
And that's because they're pigs and they don't wash their sheets,
exactly.
Right? You know that?
Well, I assume that. Just like you're assuming that
But just so the record's clear, when I said they're pigs and they wash their sheets, that's what you said.
Absolutely.
Zeller then claimed that the prosecutor was framing him.
Well, the DNA witnesses, did you hear them say that they actually did retest NB32, that they actually took the sheet, recut another sample, and had another analyst do the same test? Did you hear that?
Yes.
So the retesting was done.
I believe FDLE is siding with the prosecution. Of course they're going to say that.
Eventually, the jury found Zeller guilty of first-degree murder.
Verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Robin Cornell. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Lisa Story.
But what Zeller did next left the whole courtroom stunned. At his sentencing, Zeller appeared in handcuffs. First, he asked his attorney for a private discussion.
What's up?
As the attorney leaned in, Zeller threw a cheap shot with his elbow. Thankfully, the detectives quickly subdued him.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Meanwhile, the lawyer saw the funny side of the incident.
I used to box. I've taken a lot better shots than that. I had no idea he was going to do something like that. Obviously, he's been planning on that, but as he was going down, he said he was sorry he missed. Oh, he's been cooperative throughout the entire case. It's just, I mean, we've provided him with discovery. We've gone to see him and talked to him.
After the dust settled, it was time for Zeller to learn his fate.
The court's review of other capital cases has led the court to conclude that the death penalty would be a proportionate sentence in this case. Therefore, the court concludes that under the laws of the state of Florida, the defendant has forfeited his right to live.
He was sentenced to the death penalty.
Accordingly, it is ordered and adjudged that the defendant, Joseph Adam Zeller, is hereby sentenced to death for the murder of Robin Cornell and the murder of Lisa Story.
This is Deborah Melky. She was sentenced to death and spent 22 years on death row for a crime she did not commit in Phoenix, Arizona.
During this whole tragedy, I was angry. Of course I am. I still am. But I can't change anything. All I can do is learn how to live with it.
Melky's 4-year-old son was found dead in a desert, being shot 3 times. Melky was questioned by Detective Armando Soldat Jr., which was not recorded or reported at all. He claimed that Melky admitted to arranging the murder.
She then decided that it'd be best for Christopher Melky to die.
She was then charged with first-degree murder, despite no actual record of her admitting to the crime.
My innocence did not matter in their pursuit of a conviction.
The state determined she had masterminded the shooting, and she was sentenced to death. Over 20 years later, questions started to get asked regarding Melky's confession to Detective Saldate, which Melky still denies ever giving.
I had absolutely nothing to do with the brutal murder of my son, Christopher, and I did not give a confession to Mr. Saldate.
Reportedly, the court found that Detective Saldate had a long list of lying under oath and violating individual rights while interrogating. Melky's alleged confession was the only direct evidence linking her to the crime. And finally, 24 years after the arrest and facing the death sentence, her conviction gets overturned. Listen as she shares her thoughts for the wrongful conviction.
Losing a child to murder is a devastating tragedy. Being falsely accused of a crime you didn't commit is also a devastating tragedy. Try to imagine that. What happened to me could happen to any one of you.
Melky now walks out a free woman.
There's still a lot of people think that you were responsible for the killing of your son. Anything you can say about that?
To people who still think she's guilty, the Ninth Circuit and the Arizona Court of Appeals both reviewed this case thoroughly. And they said that this was egregious prosecutorial and police misconduct that constituted a severe stain on our justice system. And that's the truth of what happened in Deborah's case.
What would you like to say to the detective?
I don't know how you could look at yourself in the mirror every day, knowing that you falsely arrested somebody, you accused me of something I did not do. You didn't even have the decency to have a witness in the room, to do your job the right way. The only reason you didn't do your job the right way and didn't have a witness in the room is because you walked in that room and you knew what you were going to do to me.
There are no reports of Melky receiving any compensation.
Watch this video right here. It appears as though Mellen puts something there in his mouth just seconds after the guilty verdict is read. And after a closer look at this video, it seems as though he actually did this twice in about a 5-minute span.
This is Michael Marin. His story is one of dramatic highs and devastating lows. A Yale-educated lawyer and successful financier, Mellen was known for his adventurous spirit. He had scaled Mount Everest, piloted a Cessna 310, and even served as a Mormon missionary. But behind this facade of success, Mellen harbored a dark secret that would lead to his shocking demise in court. On July 5th, 2009, Marin's life took a drastic turn. Unable to keep up with the mortgage payments on his $2.3 million mansion in the luxurious Biltmore Estates neighborhood of Phoenix, Arizona, Mellen devised a desperate plan. He decided to set fire to a 6,600 square foot home in an attempt to escape his financial woes. Clad in scuba gear and breathing through an oxygen tank, Mellen made a dramatic escape from the second floor of his burning mansion. This bizarre act immediately raised suspicions among fire officials. Investigators discovered that the fire had been set at 4 different points using an accelerant. 28 phone books were found near packing boxes used as kindling for the fire. The scuba gear, ready for use, was found next to a portable ladder in Marin's master bedroom closet. Adding to this suspicion, Mellen's prized possessions, including 18 etchings by Pablo Picasso, were safe in his other home in Gilbert, Arizona. This raised questions about his motives and the extent of his financial troubles. With mounting evidence, Mellen was arrested and charged with arson of an occupied structure. Fast forward to June 28, 2012, the day of his trial, the courtroom was packed and the tension was palpable. Mellen faced up to 16 years in prison if convicted. The prosecution painted a picture of a man driven to desperate measures by his financial troubles. Michael Mellen couldn't pay his mortgage, so he burned down his house, Deputy Maricopa County Attorney Chris Rapp stated in his opening remarks. As the trial progressed, the evidence against Mellen continued to mount. The prosecution argued that Mellen's dramatic escape was a calculated move to divert suspicion. Mellen's defense team tried to counter these claims, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated and finally reached a verdict. As the jury foreman read the verdict,
"We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, do find the defendant, Michael James Mellen, guilty of arson of an occupied structure, We further find this offense is a dangerous felony because the offense involved the discharge, use, or threatening exhibition of fire, a deadly weapon.
But what happened next left everyone in shock. Moments after the verdict was read, Mellen buried his face in his hands and appeared to place something in his mouth. His face began to turn red, and he took a sip from a plastic sports bottle. Minutes later, he experienced convulsions and collapsed. Cameras captured every moment of this dramatic and tragic scene. Mellen was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office launched an investigation into his sudden death. They discovered a canister labeled cyanide in Mellen's car. Toxicology results were awaited to confirm if cyanide was the cause of death.
It rapidly distributes throughout the body and basically kills the cells. And this happens within minutes.
Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio revealed that Mellen's son had received a delayed email from his father, instructing him on how to handle his affairs if things went poorly in court and where to find his car. Records indicated that Mellen had purchased cyanide powder in 2011, before the start of his trial. It was speculated that Mellen had made capsules from the cyanide powder, which he swallowed in the courtroom.
I don't know what his motive was to go public and allow the whole world to see he committed suicide in front of cameras in a courtroom for the whole world to see.
Your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
She's not my granddaughter. She was a troubled kid. How troubled, we had no idea.
This is Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero. They're facing multiple charges, including murder with a deadly weapon, arson, robbery with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to conduct robbery, and multiple counts of fraudulent use of credit or debit cards at the Regional Justice Center in Las Vegas.
On April 9th, 2021, police arrived over in Dunphy Court. This is a single-family residence, the house of Daniel Halseth and his daughter Sierra. And when the police arrive, they find a body in the garage.
The teenage couple murdered Sierra's father, 45-year-old Daniel Halseth. They stabbed him over 60 times and attempted to burn his body and house.
One of his wrists appears as if it was partially dismembered, as if someone tried to literally saw through Daniel to take him apart.
Then they took his debit card and fled to Salt Lake City, indulged themselves, and opened a YouTube channel where they callously shared information like this.
Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And we had sex a lot today.
It was worth it. I got plenty of sex.
The teen dated in 2020, but their parents did not approve of the relationship, forcing them to end it.
Where did the evil come that was bred into a soul that murders their own father?
On April 9th, 2021, Daniel's lifeless body was discovered in the garage of his Las Vegas home. The teenagers were subsequently apprehended in Salt Lake City.
About 8:35 in the morning on the 13th, transit police encounter Aaron and Sierra using a tram. They're making out. They're just kind of living their best life on the tram in Utah. What happens essentially is they're asked for their tickets and they don't have any tickets. The transit authority asked them for their name or identification and Aaron and Sierra provided. They run a name check, up pops the warrant. And so Aaron and Sierra are taken into custody by Utah Transit Authority for the murder of Daniel and are promptly then ultimately brought back to Las Vegas. They get caught by just simply giving over their names and not paying for a tram ticket.
Throughout the court proceedings, the behavior of Sierra was starkly different from that of Aaron. Aaron Guerrero seems to be emotionally breaking down. When he was allowed to speak, he had this to say.
I ask for forgiveness as I get sentenced today, and I hope it brings you a little peace.
Meanwhile, Sierra Halseth appeared disinterested, bored, and detached from the gravity of the situation. She claimed that her father had physically and sexually abused her.
He locks me in place and starts pushing me and hitting me around.
Eventually, they were both found guilty by District Judge Tiara Jones.
55 days credit for time served. That is a total aggregate sentence of life in the Nevada Department of Corrections with the possibility of parole up to 22 years of good service.
For Sierra's grandmother, a lot has changed.
You're in a tough spot because your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
Well, she's not my granddaughter.
I realized it was Hannah. I could hear her groaning beside me. I kept trying to reassure her. Someone will come help us. Don't worry. Just keep breathing. Just please stay with me. I said that to her 1,000 times.
This is Ethan Crumbley, a mass shooting suspect facing multiple murder charges in Michigan. On November 30th, 2021, 15-year-old Ethan opened fire at his Oxford high school, fatally injuring several students and teachers. Ethan reportedly used his father's 9mm handgun, who called 911 once he found the gun missing.
I have a missing gun, and my son was at the school. And then someone told me that there was an active shooter, and then I raced home just to find out. And I think my son took the gun.
Within minutes, first responders arrived at the scene.
Car is responding on an Assista County medical emergency, Oxford High School. The scene is not secure, possible multiple injuries.
They evacuated everyone to safety.
Slow down, you're fine.
Tragically, it was too late for 3 students who died at the scene. A 4th succumbed to his injuries later at the hospital. Ethan was arrested shortly after the shooting. His parents were called to the station where they confronted their killer son.
I don't think we need to ask too many questions right now.
However, Ethan's only concern was his cat Dexter, apparently named after a psychopathic TV character.
I love you.
His parents were shocked at their son's lack of remorse. Ethan was charged with first-degree murder and terrorism. At his trial, the prosecution laid out the seriousness of the case.
The hearing today is the most important legal proceeding in the lives of nearly everyone in this courtroom. It is incredibly important for the defendant. His life is at stake. But everyone else is here in this courtroom today because this defendant made the decision to kill 4 other people and to take their lives instead of his own.
Ethan's journal and chilling text messages containing a list of things he needed for the shooting, including pistol mags, a mask, and a knife, were presented as evidence.
And then throughout this page, the defendant write a list of items that appears that he plans to take on November the 30th.
Ethan had written his desires for the shooting in graphic detail.
I will cause the biggest school shooting in Michigan's history. I will kill everyone I see. The first victim has to be a pretty girl with a future so she can suffer just like me.
Ethan also mentioned that he wanted his victims' parents to suffer.
I just saw a group of girls sitting down in the hallway. If I had my pistol on me, then I would have not hesitated to blow both of their brains out. I would just hope their parents will feel with sadness and distraught. When I shoot up the school, I hope that every parent of kids I gratefully murder will be so sad that they kill themselves.
There were also recordings of a failed kidnapping and murder plan of a girl next door.
I started making a plan. It was a plan to kidnap and kill her. I talked to find out where she lives and found out she lives a 5-minute walk away from me. I made this plan to break in the BR bedroom at night and kidnap her with an industrial-sized garbage bag. I would then take her to my basement where I would torture and until I slit her throat alive. I was so close to executing the plan, but fortunately, my friend, Redacted, stopped me very calmly.
A week before the shooting, Ethan did a bunch of Google searches about prison sentences in Michigan.
He Google searched, what is the worst prison sentence you can get in Michigan? He wrote, what is a life sentence for a 15-year-old?
One day before the incident, he recorded his thoughts and plans for the shooting.
The name is Ethan Crumbley, aged 15, and I will walk behind someone
and I will shoot a bullet in their skull. I'm going to open fire on everyone in that hallway. The hallways are too jam-packed. I will try and hit as many people as I can, and I will find people hiding. I'm going to teach them a lesson.
Ethan went on to say how he couldn't get the idea of killing people out of his mind.
I can't stop thinking about it. Like, it's constantly in my head. Every conversation I have with someone, no matter what, I'm thinking about it.
His school principal took to the stand, where she recounted how she desperately tried to save one of the victims.
I could feel the entrance wound in the back of his head. I could see that the bullet had exited through his eye. When I put my hand down on the ground, I put my hand in what would have been his eyeball. I immediately started to begin take his pulse and check his vitals as best as I could.
Ethan initially pleaded not guilty on the grounds of insanity, since he had several chaotic meltdowns in custody. Well, one time he asked for help. On another occasion, he kept yelling, "Oh God, why didn't you stop it?" And, "I am sorry."
Why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you stop it? I know she stopped it. Please stop it. Please stop it. Please stop it. Why didn't you stop it, God? Why didn't you stop it? I'm sorry. Please, God. I'm sorry.
A mental health expert said Ethan had a psychosis episode and deemed him mentally ill.
We witness a child in the throes of psychosis. He's having a panic attack and a break with reality.
A school senior also said that Ethan was often bullied and picked on.
No, I do not know who he is, but I have seen him around the school, and he's a kid, you know, he's a regular kid that goes to school, you know. He's been picked on and stuff like this, so when a kid has been picked on and stuff, people's bullying him, you're gonna get this. You're gonna get this reaction.
However, Ethan later confessed and pleaded guilty to all charges.
Is it true that your actions on November the 30th, 2021 caused the deaths of Madison Baldwin, Tamir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling?
Yes.
At his sentencing, family members of the victims addressed the killer of their loved ones.
We want you to spend the rest of your life rotting in your cell. What you stole from us is not replaceable.
As I don't wish death upon you, that would be too easy. I hope the thoughts consume you and they replay over and over in your head. The thoughts won't stop. I'm sure you heard that paraphrase before. I hope the screams keep you up at night and they cause real hallucinations.
While the mother of one victim wished for a worse punishment than death, the father of another asked the judge to sentence him to life.
I feel strongly that the individual should never be allowed to walk among his peers again. And this is why I'm going to ask you to lock this son of a up for the rest of his pathetic life. His blatant lack of human decency and disturbing thoughts on life in general do not in any way warrant a second chance. My son doesn't get a second chance, and neither should he.
A remorseful Ethan spoke to the victims' families and apologized for the pain he caused them.
My actions were because of what I chose to do. I could not stop myself, but I am the one who led to why we are here today. Because I really am sorry for what I've done, for what I've taken of them. I cannot give it back, but I can try my best in the future to help other people, and that is what I will do.
Ultimately, it was time to learn his fate.
The court cannot underscore defendant's extensive planning and execution in this case enough. He practiced shooting at a gun range, and on November 30th, 2021, he could have chose not to conduct the school shooting, but he didn't. He continued to walk through the school, picking and choosing who was going to die. But defendant shot and killed Justin Schilling at point blank range after having him get down on his knees in front of another student. He shot most people multiple times. And as he wrote, he did this for notoriety. And he wanted to go down in history as the biggest school shooter in Michigan history. He wanted to see the impact of his crime. which is why he did not take his own life. With that, the court having read the PSI and being fully familiar with the defendant and the underlying facts of this case, sentences of the court is that defendant shall serve life without the possibility of parole.
Ethan Crumbley was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 24 years. Later, his parents, James and Jennifer Crumbley, were charged with involuntary manslaughter for failing to secure the handgun and ignoring the warning signs of their son's behavior. Ethan had previously claimed that he paid James to buy him the gun, which was used in the shooting.
Is it true that you asked him to buy the firearm?
Yes.
Is it true that you gave him your own money to buy the firearm?
Yes.
CCTV footage also showed Ethan practicing shooting with Jennifer at a local range with the same gun, just days before he killed 4 people. The parents fled after the shooting and were arrested while hiding in a friend's shop.
It's dramatic body cam video of a SWAT team arresting the parents of school shooter Ethan Crumbley.
The police realizing they got a call, they got a tip that the car was seen at a location, and the police just swarmed in. We saw heavily armed police officers, SWAT team members all over the east side of Detroit looking for them.
Both were convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison. This was the first time in American history that a parent was criminally charged for a mass school shooting committed by their child. This is Ryan Stone, a Colorado man that went on a crime spree that spanned 5 counties and was broadcasted live by a news station's helicopter. Stone was convicted of carjacking 3 vehicles, including one with a 4-year-old inside the SUV. Authorities said when Stone sped away, he led police on a chase at speeds over 100 miles per hour. If we rewind here, you can just barely see a vehicle that Stone was driving, clipping a trooper with a Colorado State Patrol as he was trying to place stop sticks. He ended up with serious injuries. You see Stone pull out another victim from their vehicle and drive off. He heads right into a busy intersection, and now the chase is on foot. He books it off the road into a parking lot, running in between 2 buildings. As he slips on the ice, he loses his jacket. Now there's just a fence in his way, but nope, it's too high. Cops now close in, and he finally surrenders. Stone is now in the county jail, but he believes he should be getting paid for his internet fame while bragging to his friends about the high-speed chase.
Hey, did you know I made the news in the UK and Australia? What? Yeah, you get paid by YouTube. So, Channel 7 News, I believe, is going to be the one that gets paid for that. Well, I'm going to contact Channel 7 News. I want to get paid. You guys are getting paid using my name and my video footage.
During his opportunity to address the court about the recordings in jail, Stone blames it on emotional stress and the use of drugs.
We are going through trial after that, a week and a half trial. Extremely stressful. One of the phone calls about seeming like I was bragging about making international news, this, that, and the other. That was within the first week of being arrested. Still coming off of drugs.
Stone was convicted of 18 charges, including attempted manslaughter, child abuse, and assault. Then the judge sentenced him to 160 years in prison. This is Deobra Redden, who's facing charges for attempted battery in Nevada. 30-year-old Redden was arrested after he allegedly attacked a man with a baseball bat. He pleaded guilty and faced a possible sentence of 1 to 4 years in prison. At his sentencing, Redden had a calm and matter-of-fact exchange with Clark County District Judge Mary Kay Holthus.
Based on my criminal history, like I feel that like I shouldn't be like sent to prison for a second time.
Have you looked at your criminal history? Have you looked at your criminal history?
I've actually just I looked at it.
I mean, you lived it, I suppose.
I just looked at it, yeah.
Yeah.
Judge Holthus then reminded Redden of his criminal history.
3 felonies, a gross, 9 misdemeanors, multiple DVs. Got a lot going on, sir.
Yeah, I just figured like
battery on a protected person, robberies, attempt home invasion.
Redden, who struggled with mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, tried to convince the judge that he deserved a second chance.
I feel like I shouldn't be sent to prison but it's appropriate for you, then you have to do what you have to do. But I figured that, you know, if I'm in a better place in my life, I'm not doing drugs, I'm not out there committing crimes now, you know, and I feel like I should be given a shot because I'm in a better place than I was.
But Judge Holthus was having none of it.
I appreciate that, but I think it's time that he gets a taste of something else because I just can't with that history.
This is when things got crazy. Redden launched over the courtroom bench and headed straight for Judge Holthus. Eventually, deputies were able to restrain him. As alarms went off in the courtroom, people started to call for help.
That's affirmative medical is requested. Judge's chambers.
Yeah, be advised. 515's got a big laceration to his head. Judge hit her head into the wall, and I got an inmate that's bleeding up here.
It's going to be a positive transport to UMC for the marshal.
Be advised, I'm also going to need a biohazard cleanup for a lot of blood on the floor.
It was later found that Redden allegedly punched Judge Holthus and pulled out parts of her hair. One marshal had to be hospitalized and needed 25 stitches after suffering a forehead injury as well as a dislocated shoulder. A few days later, Redden was seen in court again, heavily shackled and wearing a spit mask for the sentencing of his initial assault case.
Good morning. All right, this is on for the continuation of Mr. Redden's sentencing. For purposes of the record, I want to make it clear that I am not changing or modifying the sentence I was in the process of imposing last week before I was interrupted by defendant's actions. All right, that being said, in accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court does now sentence you, in addition to the $25 administrative assessment fee, $150 DNA fee, the $3 DNA administrative assessment fee, and $250 indigent defense fee, 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections.
Additionally, he faced 13 new charges for the attack on Judge Holthus, including attempted murder, battery, and extortion by threat. If convicted, Redden could spend decades in prison. This is Clifford Williams. He was sentenced to death and spent 43 years behind bars for crimes he did not commit in Jacksonville, Florida.
I just wanted to get out and be with my 6 kids. They was gone and it wasn't nobody but them.
Williams was 34 and his 18-year-old nephew, Nathan Myers, were suspects in a murder and attempted murder. The survivor of the shooting claimed that she had been shot by the uncle and nephew, identifying them both by name. Despite having solid alibis, Williams and Myers were both arrested and charged within hours. No physical or DNA evidence pinned the two men to this crime, yet both men were found guilty. Williams was sentenced to death and Myers was given a life sentence. It wasn't until 43 years later, while they were in prison, there was a new investigation on the scene, proving that the ballistic reports from the crime lab didn't match the original testimony, and it was the only evidence pinning the men to this crime. And now, this is the moment that Williams and Myers have been waiting for 43 years.
Mr. Williams and Mr. Myers, the indictments have been dismissed against you. You are free to go, and we are adjourned.
After they hear that they are free, they hug each other and their team. Williams and Myers both received $2 million in state compensation. This is 80-year-old Dolores Sheinis in the Broward County Bond Court in Fort Lauderdale.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Sheinis, Abraham Arthur Sheinis, and I have been legally divorced for 31 years, and I have the papers to prove it.
She landed herself in jail for resisting arrest after violating a restraining order filed by her ex-husband.
We both resided at 20 Bend, and he paid for the apartment entirely. His assumption is because he paid for the apartment, he's entitled to do as he pleases.
I can't get in the middle of who owns the apartment.
I know, that's not the point. The point I'm telling you.
I need to keep you away from him, all right?
I haven't bothered him for 31 years. Why would I bother him now?
Rather than actually getting up in arms, Judge John Hurley decides to release Sheinis on a personal recognizance bond, so long as she agrees to stay away from her ex-husband.
You are not allowed to call him, text him, email him. You are to stay 500 feet from him at all times. That's where he lives, where he works, anywhere in between. Ma'am, you're getting a second chance on this case. I don't particularly feel like keeping an 80-year-old woman in the jail who has no criminal record. But this is your second warning. Don't go around him again.
I swear to God and all that's holy on a stack of Bibles, I will never go near him, talk to him, call him, or
what was
even
the
look
first
at him.
thing you were going to swear on besides the Bibles?
All that's holy.
What?
I don't remember.
Oh.
What?
All that's holy.
What?
All that's holy. Yeah.
Oh, all that's holy. Yes, sir. I didn't recognize your twang.
The senior's sassy remark catches Judge Hurley off guard.
Ma'am, have you ever thought of doing a stand-up routine? Have you ever thought about that?
I did. If you pay me good money, sweetheart, I'll be there. I'm really short of funds.
Ma'am, I got to tell you something. You seem like you have a great wit about you.
I do, sir.
Yeah, so...
I mean, sweetheart, that's the only thing I have.
I've been called sweetheart in this courtroom.
Does that mean you're taking me for breakfast?
Let me ask you something, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
How have I done as a judge today? So far, how am I doing?
Not bad, but you could do better.
Can we get a drum roll with this?
With the case already wrapped up, the only thing the judge, the public defender, and all the other inmates are waiting for is one final punchline.
I gotta tell you, you brighten my day, ma'am. All right?
That's what the last guy said, and then he sued me.
She's just a really funny, sincere, kind of not holding anything back kind of lady, and she really charmed the whole courtroom. She really had us all in stitches.
But when Sheinis' daughter, who lives in New York, arrived in court, all the joking ceased.
She's very entertaining one moment, and the next moment she's threatening to, take you down.
Beth Sheinis has shined a light on a dark subject.
My mother has mental disability, and she needs a hospital, not a jail, and she needs to be put into a hospital, and I've been trying to do that for 6 months to no avail in the state of Florida.
With few options and even fewer alternatives, the judge decided to send Sheinis for a mental health evaluation.
And it's not going to be any harm to you, but they're going to take a look at you and come to a determination, probably today or tomorrow, and then you'll
I would say today, sir.
After getting an evaluation, Dolores Sheinis Beth was placed in a mental health facility.
Oh, hello, sweetheart. You look fantastic tonight. Did you grow a few inches? Because you look taller.
The court is going to order that you be taken to the nearest Baker Act receiving facility.
This is Diana Lovejoy. She used to be married to Greg Mulvihill, living in Carlsbad, California. But soon their marriage fell apart and they divorced. After a messy divorce and lots of legal trouble, it ended with the court ordering Diana to pay $120,000 to Greg for his stake in their family house. The court also ordered that she must share custody of their son. Diana became furious about hearing the court orders. So, she planned to kill her ex-husband by teaming up with her boyfriend Weldon McDavid. Greg was shot in the torso, but luckily the bullet didn't hit his heart and he survived. Both McDavid and Diana conspired to murder, and the court has sufficient evidence against them.
It's so painful that some people in this world seem to think that I would have it in me to do this.
Interestingly, she fainted in court. She lowered her head down toward the defense table for a few seconds.
Verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Diana Jean Lovejoy, guilty of the crime of attempted murder of Greg Mulvihill.
And right when you hear guilty, you hear a thud.
Guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
It silenced the courtroom, aside from hearing her family cry in the background.
I need to take a break.
She then is brought onto the floor. And when medics bring her out, she still appears to be passed out. But doctors later found out she had only fainted. Weldon McDavid received 50 years to life in prison because he was the one that pulled the trigger. And Diana was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison. This is Siale Angelou. The courtroom was filled with tension on that fateful day in 2014. Siale Angelou, a 25-year-old member of the Tongan Crip gang, was on trial for gang-related racketeering. This trial was the final chapter in a long legal saga that began with a 2010 indictment accusing 17 Tongan Crip members of assault conspiracy, robbery, and weapons offenses. Angelou was the last defendant to stand trial, with previous defendants receiving sentences ranging from 10 to 30 years in prison. As the trial progressed, the atmosphere grew increasingly charged. Angelou sat beside his attorney, listening intently to the testimony of a witness. This witness, shackled and vulnerable, was recounting events that could determine Angelou's fate. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with anticipation. Then, in a sudden and shocking turn of events, Angelou rose from his seat with a calm demeanor that belied his intentions. He grabbed his lawyer's pen. Before anyone could react, he sprinted toward the witness stand. A voice cried out, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" But it was too late. Angelou leaped with his right arm cocked overhead, pen in hand, aiming to strike the witness. The witness, sensing the imminent danger, managed to back out of the way just in time. Angelou fell feet first over the front of the witness stand, his attack thwarted, but his intentions clear. In those critical moments, an unidentified U.S. Marshal sprang into action. With no time to waste, the marshal fired 4 shots at close range, each one finding its mark. Angelou collapsed, fatally wounded. The courtroom erupted into chaos. A woman screamed in horror, her voice piercing the stunned silence. Law enforcement officers in suits rushed toward the witness stand, their faces etched with shock and urgency. Angelou's defense attorney dove under a desk, seeking cover from the sudden violence. Prosecutors stood frozen, unable to process the rapid turn of events. A bailiff quickly moved to block the entrance to the front of the courtroom. Pointing at people in the gallery, he ordered them to stay still. His right hand on his holstered weapon. "Get on the ground!" someone yelled at Angelou.
Drop the kid out of your hand. Drop it out of your hand.
Another officer shouted, standing over the fallen defendant. As U.S. District Judge Tenor Campbell was escorted out of the courtroom, someone dialed 911.
And I saw Siale just running towards the victim, and then all of a sudden I heard the gunshot. Everything seemed like it was slowed down and a little bit silent, but it just was very surreal. I never thought I'd see anything like that.
Former U.S. Attorney Brett Tolman later revealed that Angelou had assured the judge he would behave, which is why he wasn't shackled. When you have a jury, you always want the defendant to appear like he is in regular, civilian clothes, that he's not in handcuffs, that he has a fair shot at being treated fairly by the justice system, Coleman explained. The video released after a media coalition, including CBS affiliate KUTV and the Associated Press, argued it was a public record, sparked intense debate about police use of force.
Maybe he had a ballpoint pen, okay? And I agree that can be a weapon of sorts, of course. But you've got maybe 10 officers in there, 10 marshals, all fit, well-trained, armed. They don't need to shoot to kill this young man who's going over that witness partition. They weren't entitled to use the death penalty on him for an assault, okay? With a pen. So that's the problem I've got with the judge's decision. This marshal was out of control.
The unidentified U.S. Marshal was cleared of any wrongdoing shortly after the shooting. Lindsay Donahue, a spokeswoman for the Marshal Service, stated that the video demonstrates how quickly violence can erupt in any situation. The FBI cleared the officer, and a review board found the use of force was within agency policy. U.S. District Judge John Doyle dismissed the Angelau family's wrongful death suit, citing the video as proof that the marshal, referred to as Jane Doe, acted reasonably, having carefully reviewed the video of Mr. Angelau's swift flight from counsel table, his vault over the witness stand with pen in hand, and his attempt to violently attack the shackled witness. The court has little difficulty determining that Jane Doe's use of force to immediately stop Angelau's attack was objectively reasonable under the totality of the circumstances, Doyle wrote.
Did you think you would die in prison?
Yes, and I had visions of the prison gates opening up, and I'm walking through them.
This is Vincent Simmons. He's been wrongly imprisoned for 44 years.
Bringing you the story today of a man who has spent decades in prison for a crime he says he did not commit. His name is Vincent Simmons.
Back in 1977, he was convicted of attempted aggravated rape.
He raped 2 of us, and he put us in a trunk to die. He had me write our names down, and he told us he was going to kill us. And we believed every word of it. And we were not going to tell anyone. Our plan was we were going to die with this.
Time to let him go, y'all.
When the shackled Vincent Simmons arrived at the Ovoils Parish Courthouse in a prison van, he was carrying a Bible. And when his accusers, Karen and Sharon Sanders, the twins that he was convicted of sexually assaulting when they were 14 years old, walked to the courthouse, they paused to pray.
We called him Simmons all night. There's so many things about that night. He gave us his name.
When you were questioned by the sheriff,
Yes.
you never gave the name Simmons.
No, we did not.
You never described what he looked like.
No, we did not.
You said all
Blacks
in,
look alike.
And you said all N-words.
That's right. Sure did.
So how are we to square the fact that that night you couldn't explain anything? You didn't have his name, you didn't know what he looked like, but now you're telling me today, and you testified at trial, that his name was Simmons.
That's right.
How does that happen?
Okay, this is how it happens. We had all 3 swore to each other that we would not tell a soul.
May I ask you, with all due respect?
Yes.
Why did you make that pact to not say anything? Why
We
wouldn't
were
you
scared.
immediately report it?
Because we were scared. He told us that he had friends and that he would come back to kill us if we told anybody.
Simmons had been in prison for 44 years and tried for most of that time to get his conviction overturned.
You've done this 16 times, at least.
Yes.
So this would be 17. You think this will be the time?
Yes, sir.
Simmons was about to face a judge who had recently examined information that was available in 1977, but it was not presented at his trial. That was information that he and his attorneys believed may have changed his conviction for attempted aggravated rape.
One of the attorneys, who was Vincent's defense attorney at the time of trial, says they never knew that the coroner said you were a virgin, that the coroner said there was no evidence of sexual assault found on either one of you.
Okay, well,
They didn't know that.
Well, it's 2 weeks later, and it's still not important. The fact is, he still attempted, and he wasn't successful, so he still raped me, and he did rape her.
So how do you react, though, when the report essentially says
I
there
don't
was
care,
no
because it-
evidence of sexual assault?
Because it doesn't matter. There was. Because we know. By now, I think if we were lying, we would have given up. But I'm not giving up.
It took less than an hour for Judge Billy Bennett to say that there had been a lapse in Louisiana justice in 1977.
You free, brother. You free.
You're free. Done.
And that Vincent Simmons deserves a new trial.
There's no physical evidence that connects him to that crime. There's no blood, there's no semen, there's no hairs, there's nothing. And listen, Vincent served 44 years here at Louisiana State Penitentiary, but he was supposed to serve 100. That was the sentence. For the last 30 or so years, he kept trying to tell judges, I didn't get a fair trial, and here's the information, and they just dismissed him left and right. Get out of here, get out of here. But yesterday, there was a judge who said to him, I believe that you did not get a fair trial. In fact, that judge's daddy, nearly 30 years ago, dismissed Vincent's attempt. But this judge said, Your rights were denied, they were violated, and you get a fair trial.
And that is when the shackles came off of his feet. The district attorney said he will not retry Simmons.
I'm so happy to see you.
His accusers, Sharon and Karen Sanders, now 59 years old, decided to stand down.
He went in guilty. He's guilty now, and guess what? He will die guilty.
You ready?
So I'm happy.
Yeah.
I got 44 years.
All right.
Let's go.
What was that moment like for you when you realized that what the judge said meant you were a free man?
Yeah, it dawned on me. This is it. You know? Man, we've been waiting all these years for this.
You'll turn 70 on Thursday.
On Thursday.
Did you think you would die in prison?
Yes. And I had visions of the prison gates opening up. And I'm walking through them.
Are you mad at anyone?
No, I'm not mad.
So you're not mad at the women?
No. I'm not mad at them. I mean that. When I told them I forgive them, that's what I mean. Forgiveness.
But before he could be free, a remarkable thing happened. Louisiana prison officials required that the shackles go back on, so he could go back to prison to be processed.
I'm just telling you, he's a free man.
His lawyer pushed back.
You can't be in jail tonight like that. That would not be a good thing.
The victory!
He would load up again and travel another 2 hours back to Louisiana State Penitentiary, the largest maximum security prison in the nation, where at sunset, Vincent Simmons walked out of the place he has been held in since he was 25 years old.
Hey, man, I want to...
The judge said on the bench yesterday, I want to be clear, I'm not telling you that Vincent Simmons is guilty or innocent. I'm just telling you he deserves a new trial. When the district attorney stood up almost immediately and said, Judge, we're not going to retry him, that meant the charges at that moment were dropped. When Vincent walked out of here last night, he said he wanted a crawfish dinner. So he got it. What's next for him? He says he wants to leave Louisiana and start again somewhere else.
As Simmons tries to adapt to a free world he left nearly half a century ago, his legal team just set up a GoFundMe page for Simmons. All he walked out of prison with were the clothes on his back. This is Daniel Villegas. He spent 18 years in prison for a double homicide he never committed. In El Paso, Texas, Villegas was arrested at 16, where an El Paso detective reportedly threatened him with beatings and the death penalty if he did not confess. And the teenage Villegas signed a confession that was prepared by the detectives. He tried to withdraw his confession a few hours after, but by then, it was too late. He was charged with 2 counts of capital murder. With the false confession being the only piece of evidence, the jury was unable to agree on a verdict. Villegas had a retrial, and the jury returned a guilty verdict, and he was given a life sentence. After spending 18 years in prison, the verdict was thrown out, and Villegas remained out on bond, where he got married and started a family. But now we're in the 3rd trial.
If the defendant will please stand.
This is the moment that Villegas will find out if he'll go home with his family or be sent back to prison to serve his life sentence.
The state of Texas versus Daniel Villegas. Verdict form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
Villegas is now a free man.
You are no longer under any conditions. You are free to leave.
Reportedly, Villegas has filed a lawsuit against the city of El Paso. This is Esteban Carpio. The police were questioning him for the stabbing of an 85-year-old woman in Rhode Island. In the interview room was Carpio and 2 detectives. One of the detectives left the room to get water for Carpio, leaving just him and Detective Sergeant James Allen in the room. Carpio grabbed Allen's gun and then shot him twice, killing him. He then jumped out of a window which was 3 stories high and made a run for it. But he was apprehended just 45 minutes later. At his arraignment, Carpio came in wearing a mask designed to stop the offender from spitting and biting at others, with also his face being in rough shape. It stunned the courtroom. It wasn't so much Carpio with a shocking reaction, more so his family members making accusations of police brutality.
Step off.
Not guilty, Stephen! It's police brutality. He was mentally ill, and he needed help, and we couldn't get it. We tried and tried, and he didn't deserve this.
An FBI investigation concluded that the police did not use excessive force and that Carpio's injuries were sustained due to his jump from the 3rd floor of a building and struggle with the law enforcement.
Every day, I face the facts of what I did and what happened.
He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This is David Ranta. He spent 22 years behind bars for a murder he did not commit. In Brooklyn, New York, Ranta was arrested by Detective Louis Scarcella. Yes, this is another wrongful conviction that's connected to Scarcella. Ranta was put in a police lineup run by Scarcella and was identified as the shooter. But decades later, reportedly the key witness revealed that the detective had provided him with a description of whom to pick in the lineup. There was no physical evidence linking Ranta to the killing, and the evidence presented to the jury was allegedly fabricated. Ranta was then convicted and sentenced to 37.5 years to life in prison. But after spending over 2 decades in prison, the former witnesses admitted that they were pressured into testifying against Ranta. And now this is the moment his conviction gets thrown out.
Mr. Brendan, to say that I'm sorry for what you have endured would be an understatement and grossly inadequate, but I say it to you anyway. The defendant's motion to vacate the judgment of conviction is granted.
After his handcuffs were removed, he hugged his family, with all he owned thrown over his back.
Thank you all. Thank you.
After his release, he reportedly received $2 million from the state and a $6.4 million settlement from the city of New York.
When I asked who was there, who is that, a man very quickly jumped up on my bed and straddled me and put a knife to the left side of my throat and told me to shut up, or he would kill me.
July of 1984, I was a student at Elon College. As I was sleeping, a man jumped up on my bed, and I knew that he was going to rape me, and I felt pretty confident he was going to kill me.
For about 20 minutes, Jennifer was raped.
I did. I made 2 decisions that night. One is I wasn't going to die, not there, not like that, and that if I lived, I was going to pay attention to every detail about his face and remember everything that I could in those moments where I could look at his face and remember all the details about the face. I would burn it into my mind.
Jennifer eventually escaped and made her way to the police, where she...
And again, I was given the instructions, don't feel compelled to choose anyone, suspect may or may not be in there.
One day they come and get me and take me to the Burleson Police Department for a physical lineup, and they put those charges on me. I'm sitting in my cell thinking, you know, what did I do to deserve something like this?
Ronald went to trial.
I was just overwhelmed with relief. I mean, this man was going to be taken off the streets, and he would never, ever hurt another woman again.
11 years went by. Cotton maintained his innocence.
He told me, Cotton, he said, you're going home in the morning. You're an innocent man.
I asked for a private meeting between Ronald and myself, and I just looked at him and I said, if I spent every second of every minute of every hour of every day for the rest of my life telling you I'm sorry, can you ever forgive me? And he started to cry, and I had been sobbing, and he took my hand and he said, I forgave you years ago.
I said, all I want is good things, you know, for me, for you, your family, my family, peace and happiness.
And we became friends that day.
Doing it wrong, we are really failing everybody. We're failing our community because there's no trust. We're failing the defendant and the defendant's family. We're failing the victim and the victim's family. And so it doesn't make any sense why we don't want to use the best practices that we know. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Jennifer believes she would not have identified the wrong person if police had used a double-blind lineup. That's when the officer conducting the search does not know who the suspect is or which photo the witness is even looking at.
We've gone all across the United States to talk about wrongful convictions and what happens to our exonerees, and about eyewitness ID. But more importantly, we really talk about restorative justice and healing and forgiveness.
And it's just amazing the people, how excited they get by the things that Jennifer and I have done.
It's something that we thought was the right thing to do, but to know that it's really made a difference is huge.
It makes me feel very proud. You know, it's a blessing in disguise.
This is Nicolas Cruz. He carried out the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Cruz killed 17 people and wounded 17 others at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida on February 14, 2018.
I was still a child after I watched you kill 2 of my friends. I was still a child when you shot me with your gun. You shot me in the leg, and if you looked me in the face like I'm looking you right now, you would see the scars on it from the hot shrapnel that was lodged into it.
Despite the horrifying nature of Cruz's offenses, his actions during sentencing managed to shock everyone present. Cruz was arrested and charged with 17 counts of premeditated first-degree murder and 17 counts of attempted first-degree murder. He pleaded guilty to all the charges, admitting his responsibility for the massacre.
What's going on today, bro?
The demons, man.
Demons?
Voices.
Voices and demons?
Where's the voices? Where the f*** am I? Holy shit. What happened?
Shut up.
The jury could not reach a unanimous verdict on whether to recommend the death penalty for Cruz. As a result, he was automatically sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for each of the 17 murders, as required by Florida law. He was also sentenced to an additional 34 life sentences for the attempted murders. At his sentencing, Cruz attempted an apology.
I am very sorry for what I did, and I have to live with it every day. And that if I were to get a second chance, I will do everything in my power to try to help others. And I am doing this for you, and I do not care if you do not believe me. And I love you, and I know you don't believe me, but I have to live with this every day.
Cruz showed no remorse or empathy for his actions, and instead wore a red prison jumpsuit, glasses. He even laughed at one point during the proceedings.
One of the reasons that you did this, I'm talking to you right now, is to be famous. So I think that someone will steal that fame from you. Whoever takes care of you will own that fame. It's time for you to be afraid of me.
Cruz's lack of emotion and his escape from the death penalty outraged and disappointed many of the victims' relatives who had hoped for a different outcome.
Though I'm angry about this verdict and believe you do not deserve to share the same earth as the rest of us, unlike you, in a state of great adversity, I can proudly say I'll never stoop as low as you will. I'll never take my anger, pain, and suffering out on others because I am stronger than you. This entire community that stands behind me is stronger than you, and we are stronger than the hate that you give. My name is Sam Fuentes. You will not forget me. You will not forget us, not until the last day that you breathe.
This is Joe Cerna, inside the county courthouse in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He was arrested for drunk driving. As part of his probation, he wasn't allowed to drink. So when he lied about a recent urine test, Judge Lou Oliveira felt he had no choice.
Joe a night in jail because he had to be held accountable.
It was just one night, but as he entered the cell, Joe says he knew it would be one of the longest nights of his life.
When I walked into the jail cell and they closed the door behind me, I started feeling this anxiety.
It came back?
It came back, a flashback.
Retired Army Sergeant First Class Joe Cerna did 3 tours in Afghanistan and has 2 Purple Hearts to show for it. The Green Beret survived an IED and a suicide bomber. But he says his scariest moment was the night he was riding in a truck with 3 other soldiers.
We were following the creek, and the road gave way. And the vehicle went in the creek,
Truck started filling with water?
Yeah. All hope was lost.
Joe felt the water rising past his legs, then waist and neck, until finally it stopped at his chin.
How many guys got out of that truck?
Alive?
Yeah.
Just me. I was a sole survivor.
Joe says it still haunts him.
So I suffer from PTSD.
Among his issues, a fear of being in small, cramped places.
I knew what Joe was going through, and I knew Joe's history, and he had to be held accountable, but I just felt I had to go with him. I felt I had to go with him.
And so a few minutes after Joe was locked up, Judge Lou Oliveira surprised the man he sent to jail by joining him for the entire night.
We ate meatloaf, and we talked about a lot of things.
We talked about our families.
And the walls got further apart?
The walls just got, they didn't exist anymore. He brought me back to North Carolina from being in a truck in Afghanistan. That meant so much to me, sir.
I know. It was the best experience, that we could make of the situation, and I'm glad we did it together.
Joe promised the judge no more mess-ups.
I don't want to let you down, ever.
We address the issue. We address the root of the problem. Then we don't have to incarcerate. And they shouldn't be incarcerated. They should be held accountable like everyone else. But they've served their country. And if we determine and realize what was the cause of that, it's financially the smart thing to do. Morally, it's what we should do.
You know it's not how law and order usually works. But sometimes jail is not what a man needs. Sometimes the best sentence is compassion.
"14 years, 4 months, and 19 days I've been incarcerated. 10 years, 3 months of them in death row."
It started in 2004 when the Honduran immigrant was accused of killing 2 women.
So it's the case of this guy named Clemente Aguirre. And if I tell you this story, you'll say, you got to be making this shit up. It can't be true.
A man who was sentenced to die, literally was on death row, has had all charges against him dropped.
On June 25, 2004, in Altamonte, Florida, 24-year-old Clemente was indicted on charges of first-degree murder and burglary, a crime that he did not commit.
From the start, Aguirre Harkin said he found the women dead, that he tried to help, and that's how their blood got on his clothes and his footprint.
It was a gruesome crime that found his neighbors 68-year-old Carol Bryce and 47-year-old Cheryl Williams stabbed to death.
I didn't do it. I don't kill my.
However, despite Clemente protesting his innocence, police decided he was the only possible suspect, and he was sentenced to death. In the 14 years on death row, Clemente never stopped trying to clear his name. And he wasn't wrong either. As it turns out, Samantha Shell's daughter, prior to the murder, was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder.
Within inches of the mother's body and in a bathroom where the state argued the killer cleaned up is the daughter's blood, a trail of the daughter's blood going to the bathroom, and then the mother's blood on the outside of the daughter's window. And there's in the doctor's notes, a few years before this happened, where she says to her mother, "I'm gonna fucking kill you if I ever get out of here. I'll fucking kill all of you." Then we find out that she has confessed all over town. We had people coming in all over the place, testifying, affidavits that she said, "I killed my fucking mother and my grandmother, I'll do it to you."
With such irrefutable evidence implicating Cheryl's daughter, the day finally arrived for Clemente.
I do know that nobody believed me back then. No one. Besides my mother, nobody believed me, and I thank you for it. From the bottom of my heart.
He holds back tears and immediately heads towards friends and family to celebrate.
But today is a brighter day, a new day, and I got good hopes for the future.
This is Ricky Jackson. He spent over 39 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. Jackson was arrested at 18 years old, living in Cleveland, Ohio. The main witness in the case was a 12-year-old kid named Eddie Vernon, who in fact didn't see anything. And he said the police did pressure him into testifying against Jackson, which then later led to his conviction. Jackson initially was sentenced to die in the electric chair, but after spending 2 years on death row, His death sentence was reduced to life in prison. Nearly 4 decades later, the now 52-year-old Eddie Vernon came forward with the truth, stating that he never saw the murder happen. Charges against Jackson were then dropped. And after being wrongfully imprisoned for 39 years, this is the moment that Jackson hears that he is free to go.
Mr. Jackson, you're going to be free to go. Life is filled with small victories, and this is a big one. I wish you good luck. Thank you.
All right.
Jackson is now outside for the first time as a free man. Jackson received $1 million in compensation from the state and an additional $2.65 million for lost income. This is TJ Lane, who's on trial for multiple murders in Ohio. Lane was 17 when he opened fire at his Chardon High School on February 27, 2012, gravely injuring several students.
At Chardon High School, we had shots fired, gunshots, multiple gunshots. 911.
Chardon High School, we need police up here. There's someone in the building with a gun.
Authorities were flooded with panic-stricken 911 calls.
911, where's your emergency? We just had a shooting at our school. We need to get out of here. Oh, okay. Do you have any idea where the shooter is? He started in the cafeteria. He started in the cafeteria? Yeah, and he ran out. Okay, who was the shooter?
His name is Thomas Lane.
After Lane opened fire in the cafeteria, the school's assistant football coach, Frank Hall, chased him outside the premises. That's where the police found Lane when they arrived and arrested him. Tragically, 16-year-old Daniel Parmenter died at the scene, while Russell King Jr., 17, and Demetrius Hewlin, 16, later succumbed to their injuries at the hospital. The shooting also left 17-year-old Nick Wolsack permanently paralyzed. All of Lane's victims were his classmates. Lane was charged as an adult with 3 counts of murder. His friends said the teenager was often quiet and kept to himself.
He was just a person that, wanted to hide himself and keep all of his emotions in.
The kind of guy that, would sit by himself and just never bother anybody.
Reports also suggested that Lane had a deeply troubled home life. His father had previously served in prison on assault charges, while his mother often stayed away from home. Lane had initially pleaded not guilty on the grounds of insanity, claiming he often heard voices in his head. But eventually, the defendant was found competent to stand trial. So to avoid the death penalty, Lane pleaded guilty to the murders.
You pleaded guilty. You weren't too guilty to the 3 aggravated murder charges. You're free.
At his sentencing, Lane showed no signs of regret as the victims' family members addressed their children's killer.
The child stole my baby's life, and he should never be able to do this to anyone ever again.
I will have to eventually forgive you. Otherwise, you will haunt me. You will never, ever be in my thoughts after this. Never.
I want you to endure years and years of pain and abuse, which is, in my opinion, not harsh enough.
Lane's lack of remorse was more evident when he arrived for his sentencing, where he started executing his sinister plan by unbuttoning his shirt and revealing a white t-shirt with the word "killer" scribbled on it. Lane, who wore a similar t-shirt the day of the shooting, showed it off in the courtroom with a smug smile on his face. And if that wasn't enough, this is what the evil killer had to say to the victims' family members.
Saying pull the trigger to kill your son, no memory. Love you.
Ultimately, Lane was sentenced to life in prison without any chance of parole for the murder of his classmates.
First, the defendant's conduct was without any provocation. Second, it was extreme. He was relentless in his shooting. He repeatedly fired his gun at these victims in sequence, moving in the position to better the aim. He inflicted extreme injury, and he kept shooting.
This is Christopher Clay Rudd in Utah at the 4th Judicial District Court in Spanish Fork. A judge is presiding over arraignments. This is when a defendant appears in court to hear the charges against him and plead guilty or not guilty. Off to the side, Rudd is awaiting his turn. He is in court for failing to follow through on court-ordered drug treatment. He's restrained with handcuffs, but has no shackles on his legs. The courtroom has a bailiff and several officers. A lawyer heads over to speak with the bailiff and then exits the court with 2 officers. At the same time, another officer heads out of the courtroom. A woman from the gallery has walked up and is now speaking to the bailiff. None of this goes unnoticed. A warning here, what you're about to see is disturbing. Rudd just fell 18 feet onto a solid marble floor, the equivalent of jumping headfirst out a second-story window, in handcuffs. Take a look from the security camera in the front lobby. This bailiff instinctively tries to catch the defendant, just missing him. Imagine trying to catch a 160-pound sack dropped from an 18-foot height. That could be deadly. Well, Rudd is bleeding from his head, but seems responsive. Back in the courtroom, the judge keeps everything under control. Paramedics arrive minutes later and rush him to a nearby hospital. He has a broken leg and pelvis and a fractured skull. For this escape attempt, Christopher Clay Rudd is sentenced to 36 months probation. This is Shawnell Jackson. He's in the Milwaukee County Courthouse at his sentencing for being convicted of murdering a university student. Reportedly, 18-year-old Jackson and his friend were hunting for victims when they saw Potter leave a bar. Nathan Potter, the 21-year-old victim, was a college student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. They stalked him, accosted him, and demanded money. When Jackson learned that Potter didn't have any cash, Jackson shot him, which killed him. Officials said Jackson fled to Mississippi the day after Potter's murder. Jackson's uncle reportedly tipped off the police on his whereabouts, where he was arrested. When he was on trial, you can see Jackson make gestures toward the victim's family. And when he was escorted out of the courtroom, you can see him smiling at the family. Now, moments before the sentencing, Jackson's mother told the court she first heard about the killing on TV.
When I saw it on the news, I even cried. I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine what that mother is going through. I never had a clue that my child had anything to do with it. My son is not a monster. He is not a monster.
Jackson now apologizes for what he has done.
I apologize for my behaviors. Please don't take my life from me.
When the judge announced life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, Jackson has an outburst. As the deputies restrain Jackson, you can hear one of Jackson's family members scream to the victim's family. When Jackson is serving life in prison without parole, his friend pleaded guilty to acting as a lookout and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. This is Trey Alexander Wellford. He is in Lexington, Kentucky for his sentencing. He's pled guilty to the 2015 murder and robbery of Salahuddin Jitmood, a 22-year-old who'd been delivering pizzas. Jitmood was making his final delivery of the night when Wellford and 2 accomplices lured him into their apartment complex, then robbed and stabbed him to death.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Before Wellford receives his sentence, the victim's father, Sombat Jitmood, a school principal and devout Muslim, speaks directly to the man who murdered his son.
Trey Alexander Wellford, I feel so sad for you that you have to be in this situation. I wish I could help you, as I help my son to be a good citizen. If Salahuddin were to be here, if he alive, he would forgive you. That's the way he was, that's the way he is. I'm not angry at you for being part of hurting my son. I'm angry at the devil. I blame the devil who misguiding you and misleading you to do such a horrible crime. No, I don't blame you. I'm not angry at you at all. I want you to know that. I forgive you on behalf of Salahuddin and his mother.
Before Judge Kimberly Bunn delivered her sentence, there was still one person left to speak.
Mr. Wellford, do you wish to make a statement?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry about what happened that day. But I do applaud you, because it takes a powerful man to know that somebody has hurt them and do what you, get up there and say what you just said. I have a child. She is 4. And I can imagine the hurt, the pain from losing her. Just tell us what I can do. So when I thank you for your forgiveness.
Now Salahuddin family open heart, Catholic, forgive him because God said in the Holy Quran, Allah, Almighty God, is the most forgiving and the most merciful. So I did forgive you.
Chief, how extraordinary was this, in your experience, to see a father extend forgiveness?
One, I think it was something for every parent to see, and how fortunate these young men are to have such a role model and a father and a leader in a community that actually gives guidance and a path. And I think that's what we saw in this. We had 2 really good families that came together that did not know each other over some tragedy. We spoke yesterday when he came in from Thailand. We had lunch, and we were thankful for one thing, that such a horrific tragedy brought us so close as friends of being with each other.
And now it's time for the judge to announce her sentence.
Mr. Wellford, an incredibly horrible event happened that has changed the lives of 2 families forever. Nothing can fix it. I am going to accept the Commonwealth's recommendation. Murder, 25 years. And I truly wish for you the very best. Thank you.
Trey Wellford received 25 years for murder and an additional 6 years for robbery. This is Bryce Rhodes, who is currently on trial for 3 counts of murder in Louisville, Kentucky. Rhodes reportedly begun his killing spree when he shot and killed an innocent man, mistaking him for another individual. 2 brothers, a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, were in the car when Rhodes committed the murder. Because they were witnesses to the crime, a few weeks later, Rhodes killed those teenagers as well.
You close with these kids at all?
They're cool. We play basketball. I'm cool with a lot of people.
Did you hang out with them on a regular basis?
It was cool. Yeah, we hung at different times, you know. I need a lawyer, man, if you're going to keep all in my face.
Trials have been going on for years due to Rhodes' erratic behavior, starting with blowing kisses to people in the courtroom, which included the family of the victims, and next making hand gestures.
Ma'am, look at me, ma'am. Mr. Rhodes, you're smiling. I don't know why you're smiling.
Because I can. It's not a crime to smile.
I would suggest you do what helps you, not what hurts you.
Okay.
That's
do what
all.
I want to do. Let's get that understood.
Rhodes once had to wear a spit mask because he spit on this attorney.
Nice cheap shot. You a coward. Nice cheap. You a coward.
Now, in another court appearance, Rhodes makes some bizarre accusations towards the judge.
I don't know if y'all got some type of sexual relationship going on. Are you some type of racist? Which one is it?
Or are you just wrong in everything that you made a motion for?
Are you a secret Ku Klux Klan member? Is that what you really are?
With Rhodes' in court behavior being out of control and him firing several of his lawyers, The trial has been extended much longer than expected. With it still in action, it's safe to say that Rhodes will not be back on the streets anytime soon. This is Kimberly Long, who was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison for a murder she never committed in Riverside, California. Long arrived home and discovered her boyfriend dead. She immediately called 911, despite being the person who found the dead body. Long ended up becoming the lead suspect. She was soon convicted of second-degree murder and sent to prison. But 7 years later, forensic evidence showed that her boyfriend died long before she had arrived at the scene, and there was DNA of an unknown male at the crime scene.
The judgment of conviction is vacated and a new trial will be ordered.
Long is now outside of prison. The prosecution soon dropped all existing charges.
I feel happy, elated, relieved, just a lot of emotions right now.
Long reportedly received $386,000 from the California Victim Compensation Fund. This is Marquee Lloyd, who is convicted of murdering a police officer in Orlando, Florida.
Have anything you want to say for yourself?
Lloyd was already on the run from the police after he killed his former girlfriend, who was pregnant with his child. A month later, Lloyd is spotted in a Walmart. You can see him walking in. Moments later, Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton pulls in. You can see her grab a cart and walk in. Reportedly, they cross paths every few minutes. Outside the store, Lieutenant Clayton was notified, and she tried to stop and arrest Lloyd. When a shootout begun, Lieutenant Clayton was killed during the interaction. Being shot 4 times following the murder, Lloyd took off again, which led to a 9-day manhunt, where he was later found. During the arrest, he tried to escape, where he lost his left eye in the altercation. Here in court, Lloyd took the stand. Reportedly, he believed everyone was out to kill him.
And I was just reacting, Mayor. I was just reacting. Even when they opened the door, I just reacted. I fired 2 shots, just reacted.
The jury then found him guilty.
It really hurts deep down inside.
This is Lieutenant Clayton's sister giving a victim impact statement.
She stood in the place as my mother when I didn't have one. I truly miss my sister. I truly miss her.
And this is the moment that Lloyd hears, that the jury unanimously recommends the death sentence.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Marquee Lloyd, should be sentenced to death.
All right, why don't we remove Mr. Lloyd from the courtroom?
The judge later agreed with the jury and sent Lloyd to death, where he now sits behind bars waiting for his death sentence.